Megillah as we anticipate the festival of Purim, one of the most joyous times, exuberant days in the calendar, in the Jewish calendar. I would say it's probably the single day of the Jewish calendar in which exuberance and even indulgence are commonplace and even possibly legislated. But I'm not going to deal tonight with the celebration of Purim or with the mitzvot of Purim, but rather with an insight from the book of Esther. Now, Megillah Esther itself, again, very well known, very beloved. Ari, take one from here, in fact. Maybe I'll put some on the table there for those who want to sit there. We have some here and some there. So the Megillah Esther, the story of Purim, is very well known, very beloved, and I would like to explore an aspect. Actually, to be precise, it's only a single word in the Megillah that is going to serve as a springboard for us to explore the significance of the theme that I'd like to elaborate upon, and that is, as you see on your handout, I hope everyone has one of these handouts, that says, "Tomorrow is another day. Purim, Amalek, and faith in the future." And we'll start with source number 1 at the top. This is taken from the 5th chapter of the book of Esther, when the king has expressed his devotion, his affection to his beloved wife Esther, although she herself was a bit insecure about venturing into the king's chamber unbidden. But she did so at the urging of Mordechai, and he favored her, and he said, "What can I do for you, my dear wife, my bride, my queen?" And she says, "Well, I'd like you to come to a banquet." Fine, she comes to a banquet, and at the banquet he says, "What can I do for you?" He's evidently in a very favorable mood, very generous frame of mind vis-a-vis his gracious and charming and beautiful wife Esther. And she says to him, "Yes, I've got something," because he said, "until half my kingdom." So let's take a look. What is your request? It shall be granted to you. And what is your petition? What is your request? Up to half my kingdom, and it will be performed for you. So the queen answers, and this is her moment of opportunity. This is her 15 minutes of fame. This is her chance to plead on behalf of the Jewish people, but she doesn't do so. Vatan Esther vatomer sheilasi vakashasi. You know, when we read the Megillah publicly, so the Baal Kriya, if he does his job well, he kind of dramatizes it. He says, sheilasi vakashasi. He gives expression to the drama of the moment, and the king is eager to hear what does she want, because he wants something from her as well, by the way, but we don't need to dwell on that. And she says, "Here it is, da-dam." And what is it? Imatzasi chen b'nei hamelech, if I have found favor in the eyes of the king. V'imal hamelech tov, and if it is favorable in the king's view. Lases she'elasi, to grant my petition, v'lasosas bakashasi, and to perform my request. What is it? Yavo hamelech v'haman el mishta asher eseh lachem, asher eseh lahem. The king and Haman should come to the banquet that I will make for them. Umachar eseh kidvar hamelech, and tomorrow I will act according to the king's word. What we see here is that Esther has invited the king and Haman to the. Don't you sit over here just because it saves me turning around and around and around. Just yeah, that's right. Yeah. The video will only be enhanced by a moment of your image. So the queen, Esther Hamalka, has asked the king and Haman to come to a banquet, and the king, as we said, is prepared to grant her request. But she doesn't plead for her nation and for her people. She doesn't identify her background, which has been, she has hidden that information. She suppressed that from the time that she first came into the palace. But rather she says, let's try it again tomorrow. she builds the suspense. She says, tomorrow. It's like, how do you keep, in America we say, how do you keep a Polak in suspense? I'll tell you tomorrow. So that's what she does for Achashverosh as well. She says, I'll tell you tomorrow. If there's anyone here Polish extraction, I apologize. In England, they say about the Irish, and in Russia they said about the Azerbaijanis, and in Iran they also have someone that they say, and in Jewish tradition we say about, excuse me? Is Azerbaijanis? Okay. In any case, the point is that she is building the suspense, umachar. But the reason I have dramatized this so much is that is the one word that I would like to expound upon. Machar. Machar means tomorrow. So the Gemara says, Yesh machar shehula achar zman. There is a tomorrow, which is tomorrow, and there's a tomorrow which is in the future. It's also a way of saying in the future. So,
like mañana.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's an expression of something that will happen in the future. It's an expression almost of be patient. So it's interesting that Haman, as we know, is the personification, and he is indeed a descendant of which villainous biblical personality? Amalek. Amalek was a grandson of Esau. Amalek became the patriarch of a tribe, of a nation, and they embody, they personify, we could say exemplify intense hostility towards the Jewish people, even if it's baseless, even to the point of self-harm, because Amalek does attack the Jewish people and is defeated. But nevertheless, Amalek licks his wounds throughout history, and he comes back to fight another day and another day. And Haman was a scion of that dynasty, because he actually was Ha'agagi. That means he was a descendant of Agag, and Agag was the king of Amalek. Later on, hundreds of years after the original Amalek, we find that Amalekim, the king, is called Agag. Actually, Agag was probably a term for all of the kings. It wasn't a personal name, like my name is Rashi, your name is Yaakov. His name wasn't Agag, but Agag was the designation, like Pharaoh. The Egyptian kings are called Pharaoh. So, or the Roman emperors are called Caesar. It's not maybe exactly true, but the Agag is a generic term, and he was Agagi, means he was descended from the royal family of Amalek, which is a way of saying he is the quintessence of Amalek, and his antagonism, his hatred for the Jewish people is almost without bounds, as is very well known. So the original battle with Amalek was Machar. Take a look at source number 2. Umachar esekedvar hamelech. Tomorrow I will perform the will of the king. So the Medrash says, Marasa lomar machar. Why the procrastination? The moment has arrived. The king is in a favorable mood. Now is the chance to plead for your nation. But she doesn't. She says, you know what? Let's do it tomorrow. So the Medrash says, Ele shekol zar ashel Amalek lemedim lipol lemachar. All of the descendants of Amalek are going to meet their demise machar. Machar is associated. Machar somehow like encapsulates the time of the downfall of Amalek. The downfall of Amalek is not now. The downfall of Amalek is machar. V'chein hu omer machar anochi nitzav al rosh hagiv'ah. So if we take a look at source number 3, here we have the pasuk in Shmos chapter 17. It's the end of Parshas Beshalach. Parshas Beshalach narrates the departure from Egypt. It describes the splitting of the sea, describes a number of other dramatic events. And the end of Parshas Amalek, when the Jewish people are riding high and they're at the top of the world, Amalek comes and attacks the Jewish people. On this coming Shabbos, Parsha Zachar, we're going to review that event in just 3 short verses. But it's first narrated in the Torah in 9 psukim. And we find Amalek attacks the Jewish people. Amalek came and attacked the Jewish people in this place called Refidim. Take a look at the following verse though. verse 9, Pasuk Tes in the Hebrew. Vayomer Moshe Yehoshua b'char lanu anashim. So Moshe instructs his valet, his disciple, his chosen, distinguished Talmud, and ultimately, as we know, his successor. He says to Yehoshua, B'char lanu anashim, choose men, that is to say, raise an army. Utsei hilachem ba'Amalek, and go and wage war with Amalek. Amalek has attacked us, so we're going to counterattack, or we're going to defend ourselves. Utsei hilachem ba'Amalek, machar, do it tomorrow. Anochi nitzav al rosh hagivah. Tomorrow I'm going to stand at the top of the mountain. Umatei elokim biyadi, and the rod of God is in my hand. Is it a coincidence that Esther says to the king, machar, and Moshe says to Yehoshua, we're going to raise an army to mount a counterattack against Amalek. We're going to do it tomorrow. Machar, anochi nitzav al rosh hagivah. Tomorrow I'm going to stand at the top of the mountain. So one of the great creative and original Torah personalities of the 20th century was a man called Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner. I don't know whether you've ever heard of him. Rabbi Yitzchak Hutner was studied in Slobodka Yeshiva in his youth. He studied in the yeshiva that moved to Hebron. He was in the yeshiva in 1929 at the time of the infamous massacre. The massacre took place during the intercession, during the weeks shortly after Tisha B'Av, and he happened to be away. He was in Yerushalayim for that Shabbat and saved his life. Actually, when they made a memorial volume for the victims of the Hebron massacre, he was one who edited it. He was still quite a young man at that time. He went on ultimately to come to America, and he became very respected, very venerated Rosh Yeshiva, also very beloved. He had a very charismatic personality. He was a very profound thinker, a very creative thinker.
Ran away.
Excuse me?
My father and his family ran away from Hebron.
From Hebron, really?
The massacre to
Was
Jerusalem.
your father living in Hebron, or was he a student in Hebron Yeshiva?
Living, the whole family.
He's living in Hebron. This past Tisha B'Av, we spoke about the Hebron massacre. It was 90 years since the Hebron massacre.
Yeah.
So Rav Hutner was a very remarkable, very profound, very creative thinker. And his collected writings, really collected lectures that were subsequently recorded, and that is to say recorded in writing and published. It's called Pachad Yitzchak. And he says, in accordance with the teaching of the Maharal of Prague, that Amalek represents the delight, or the, let's say, giving value to now, to the here and now. And we'll see a bit more of that in a moment. The downfall of Amalek is Machar. Amalek flourishes. Today, Amalek meets his end, his bitter end, tomorrow. So that's why when it came the time for the battle with Amalek, Moshe said to Yehoshua, tomorrow. The battle with Amalek is going to be tomorrow. Tomorrow we can defeat Amalek, not today. Take a look at the next pasuk, the next citation in source number 4. So, for those who are listening closely, we said Amalek was the grandson of whom? The grandson of Esau, which means that Amalek.
The son of Eliphaz.
That's right, the son of Eliphaz, the grandson of Esau, which means that Amalek actually was a cousin of ours, according to that. But so it was, you can't always choose your relatives, and unfortunately Amalek was as we say, an implacable enemy of the Jewish people. So the roots of Amalek are naturally to be found in Esau, even though, as we said, Amalek represents, like, if you imagine a centrifuge. You know what a centrifuge is? That all the scientists just for sure know what a centrifuge is. It's a way of removing the distillate in a solution. And it spins around and around. The Iranians have a few of them, a few thousand of them actually, and they use them for science, and it's a way of like getting a concentration of the contents of a test tube or something like that. So Esav was not completely wicked, but he had wickedness within him. Amalek is like the quintessence of Esav. All of the villainy of Esav was collected in Amalek. So if you put Esav in a centrifuge and you spin it around, and the dross, the detritus of Esav, the hatred of Esav is collected, so that goes to Amalek. So that means that if we want to understand Amalek, we find the roots of Amalek's hostility and his character are found in Esav. Take a look at source number 4. So the Torah says, "Vayazed Yaakov nizid ve'avo Esav min hasadev hu hayef," that Yaakov was preparing pottage here. This is kind of archaic translation, I'm sorry, but he was preparing lentil soup or something like that. Ve'avo Esav min hasadev hu hayef. Esav came from the field, he's very tired. Vayomer Esav el Yaakov haliteni na min ha'adom hazeh. Haliteni is an interesting word. Here it's rendered, let me swallow. Really, the word haliteni, it means literally, I don't want to be crude, stuff it down my throat. That's a term that's used for feeding animals, like force feeding. Haliteni, that's the Hebrew word, not such a common word. And he used that kind of crass term because that's how hungry he was. So, min ha'adom hazeh, he didn't even identify what it was, just this red stuff. Hazeh. This. Ki ayef anochi al ken kara shmo Edom. That's why they called him Edom. Now, the word hazeh means this, but it also evokes the distinction between olam hazeh and olam haba. Hal iteni min ha'adom hazeh, this red stuff. You know, red is the most eye-catching color. That's why stop signs are red, that's why stoplight is red, and that's why, the lady in red is wearing red. That's why red light district has that name, because it's the most eye-catching. And when he says, ha'adom says this red stuff, it's like accentuates his preoccupation with that which he can see, that which is superficial. Hadom hazeh, this, it's as if he's only focused on what he can see right now. Because I'm tired. So what does Yaakov say to him? Take a look at the next verse, 31. Lamed Aleph. Vayom Yaakov machra chayom esmochras chali. Then sell it to me as the day is bright. But also there's a remez there. You can only see, you're only interested in, you're focused upon, you're fixated upon what you can see, what's happening now, what's in front of you. So today, sell it to me. And Esav is happy to do it. I'm going to die. Lama zeh li b'chora. So right now, is the b'chora of any value? The birthright, is it of any value to me? Is it of any use to me?
No.
Do I have something? Can I eat it? Can I sell it? Can I barter it? Maybe I could sell futures or something like that, possibly. But he wasn't into futures. That's the thing. He wants it now. So you want to sell? So I'm going to say Lama zeh li b'chora. Actually, if you take a look at sources number 6 and 5 and 6, because we'll go back to finish source 4 in a moment. But Esav says, I'm going to die. Now, some understand it to mean he came home from the field, he was very hungry. When he said, I'm going to die, I'm going to die of hunger. If you look at it that way, then maybe Yaakov is kind of exploiting his brother's desperation. But it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to die of hunger, because I'm going to die of faintness. I need the nutrition, otherwise I'm going to pass out. It could well mean, al derech hapshat, according to the simple meaning, I am going to predecease my father anyway. What is the birthright? When my father dies, he transmits the birthright to me. But what if I predecease my father? Then it's worth nothing to me. Esav, as we know, was a hunter, he was a trapper, he was out in the field or the forest. Take a look at source number 5. This is Rashbam. Who knows who Rashbam was? Rabbi Shmuel ben Meir. Okay, you're guessing, not bad, but and whose grandson was he? Rashi. Now that's a name I like. Rashbam was the eldest grandson of Rashi, the elder brother of Rabbeinu Tam. And Rashbam has a commentary on the Torah. He was one of the great Tosafists, one of the great halachic authorities as well. But he's also well known for his commentary on the Torah. Take a look in source number 5. Every day I go out to trap and to hunt animals in the forest. Hamitzuyim sham dubim va'arayos, and there are bears and lions. v'chayot ra'ot, and ferocious animals, v'ani mesukan lamus, and I put my life at risk every day. So sooner or later I'm going to be mauled by a hungry mountain lion. I'm going to be attacked by a bear that thinks I'm threatening her cubs. Lama zeli lahamtin chelek b'chor lachar misas avinu. Why should I wait to cash in on any benefit after my father's death, or our father, who's talking to Yaakov? Ken pirish avi harav Rabbi Meir menuchato kavod. Which, by the way, is one of the very few places that Rashbam quotes his father. He quotes his grandfather from time to time, although not that often in his commentary, because Rashi's commentary was already, I suppose, available, so he doesn't need to quote him. He does occasionally. His father he quotes not frequently, but just by the by. So that's why Esav denigrated the birthright. If you look at source number 6, also another famous Torah commentator who favors the straightforward meaning of the text rather than midrashic. This is Rabbi Avram ibn Ezra. Every day he endangers himself. Maybe the animals will kill him. He may die before his father, like Rashbam says, the same idea. So now let's go back to source number 4. So Esav says, the Bechorah, which is in the future, it's not worth anything to me because I may never even get it, because probably I'm going to die before my father in any case. So Yaakov says in verse 33, Lamed Gimel, V'yom Yaakov ha'shishava li kayom, swear to me today, V'yishava, he swore, V'yishavalo, V'yimkores Bechorah sel Yaakov, and he sold his birthright to Yaakov. But look at the coda here, to use a musical term. The coda here, the closing flourish is, V'Yaakov nasan le'Esav. Yaakov gave to Esav lechem unazid adashim. He gave him bread. He gave him this pottage that he made for him. Vayochal, and Esav ate. Vayesh, and he drank. Vayakam, and he got up. Vayelech, and he left. Vayivez Esav es habechorah, and Esav denigrated. Esav despised or scorned the birthright. Now this is notable, those last words, because even after he had eaten and drunk, and even after he had satiated himself, and even after he left, the Torah then says he still denigrated it. It still wasn't valuable to him. Even after staking his thirst, he's no longer desperate. But even so, Vayivez, it has no value. Why does it have no value? He didn't even have a twinge of regret. Maybe it wasn't such a shrewd bargain that I entered into to barter my birthright for the food that I'm eating now. No, he despised it. Why despise it? Because it's something in the future. It's intangible, and it's going to happen at a future time. Turn the page over. We have here in one of the great texts of Musar, thought, that is to say ethics and self-development, written by the famous Kabbalist and ethicist Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto. He's sometimes known by his acronym Ramchal, or Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, and this is the famous Mesilat Yesharim, Path of the Just. And he bases the whole proposition of the service of God on this principle that this world is transient. The next world is eternal. But a person can only achieve for the next world during his sojourn in this world. And let's see what he writes in the in chapter 1, in the early the basis, as I say, for his important and influential work, Misal Shushan. V'hinei ma she'horunu chachamenu zal hu sha'adam lo nivra ela listaneg al Hashem v'lenes miziv shchinaso. Our sages taught us that a man was created for the sole purpose of rejoicing in God and deriving pleasure from the splendor of His presence. Shezeh ha'tanug ha'amiti v'ha'idun ha'gadol mikol ha'idunim she'ocholim limatzeh. This is the greatest bliss, the greatest pleasure. Other forms of pleasure that we experience in this world, they may be very nice, but they are transient by their very nature. But the world to come, this offers an opportunity for eternal bliss and the greatest satisfaction, the greatest pleasure. U'makom ha'idun hazeh be'emes hu alam haba. The place for this great experience is really the next world. Ki hu ha'nivra because the next world is, so to speak, designed for that purpose. However, the path to get to the next world is this world. This world is a conduit. This world is a passageway. As we shall see in a moment, the rabbis say this world is an antechamber. It's like a foyer before the banquet hall, which is Olam Haba. V'uma shamru zichron levracha in the Pirkei Avos, ha'olam hazeh domeh leprosdor b'fnei Olam Haba. And as it continues, hatkein atzmecha ba'prosdor kidei shetikanes letraklin. Prepare yourself in the lobby, in the foyer, so that you can enter into the banquet hall. And the means by which a person can achieve that objective, the commandments which Hashem has given to us, and the place to do those mitzvot is only in this world, not in the next world. In the next world, it's too late for any mitzvot. It's too late to improve one's status in the next world, but rather that is a product of the way a person lives his life in this world. Therefore, man is placed initially in this world, so that through these means, in this world, he can get to the place which is prepared for him. Olam Haba, the next world. In order to reap the benefits or enjoy the consequences, enjoy the benefits of the way he has lived his life in this world. And the rabbis have expressed this idea, summing it up in just 4 words or 5 words in Hebrew. Hayom la'asotam, today to do them, umachar, and tomorrow lekabel scharam. But of course, a person who only is focused on this world, who's only hoping and only expecting to derive pleasure and purpose and satisfaction and fulfillment in this world, so he is lacking that recognition, that orientation of the next world altogether. It's a famous story of an American businessman who visited Radin in the early 1930s. Maybe the late 1920s, probably by the early 30s, you couldn't afford it. But the 1920s, it was the roaring 20s, and times were great. And Dr. Schmidt wrote his dissertation about how it all went wrong. But in any case, in the 1920s, late 1920s, he was making lots of money. And an American Jewish businessman was, whether on business or pleasure, he went to Europe, and he went to Poland, and he went to Radin because he wanted to visit the great sage, the Chavetz Chaim. And he got off the train station. I don't know if they had a train station in Radin even, but I'm sure wherever he got off the train station, he had to take a horse and carriage to the home of the Chavetz Chaim, who was already, at that time, in his late 80s, was renowned worldwide for his saintliness and his wisdom. He wanted to meet the Chavetz Chaim. Anyway, so he arrived there with his suitcase. He was going to stay overnight in the Radin Holiday Inn, but there he got to the Chavetz Chaim, and he knocked on his door, and an elderly man with a sweet smile opened the door, and he said, "I'd like to meet the Chavetz Chaim, Rabbi Kagan." He says, "Yeah, this is he." So he looked at him, looked at the visitor, looked at the Chavetz Chaim. He looked beyond the door, and he saw like a hovel with a dirt floor and only a few very limited furnishings, a table and maybe a few chairs, and only the barest sort of possessions. So anyway, the Chavetz Chaim invited him. So he said to Rabbi Kagan, "You're world renowned. You are admired and respected throughout the Jewish world." By the way, when he died, even the New York Times published an obituary of the Chavetz Chaim. He died in 1933, and the New York Times published an obituary for him. He was, genuinely very well known. He said, why don't you have anything more like substantial in your home, a break front, a suite of table and chairs, a bed that's respectable. So the Chofetz Chaim said to him, my friend, you've come from America. I heard in America some of the Yidden, some of the Jews are quite successful. Why are you here? You've got a suitcase and another suitcase. I mean, that's all you have. Where are your possessions? Where are your belongings? So he said, Rabbi, I live in Brooklyn. There I've got all of my things, but here I'm just visiting. I'm only here for a short while. I'm just passing through. The Chofetz Chaim said, I'm the same way. I'm just passing through. I don't need to bring with me all of my worldly possessions. I don't need to accumulate them. I'm only here temporarily. I'm only passing through. It doesn't mean that a Jewish person should not acquire the comforts of the trappings of wealth or whatever it might be. But for the Chofetz Chaim, his perspective on life did not impute value to those kinds of maybe luxuries that others may seek out. I think that this idea, which is reflected in that little story of the Chofetz Chaim, I think is so much more important for us today because we live in a time of instant gratification. Technology has advanced to the point that communications, to a great extent transportation, has provided for us instant gratification. I mean, it used to be if you ordered something from a catalog, so they might deliver it in a week to 2 weeks or something like that, or maybe if you pay extra 5 to 7 days. Now I've got Amazon, like if you have to wait 3 days for it, it's because you're a cheapskate, you don't want to pay for expedited delivery. And of course, if you're like my kids, they've all got Amazon Prime, it comes the next day. And now you got Amazon even will deliver the same day, and they're even developing those drones to deliver your things, to you, within 20 minutes and fly it across the town or something like that over all the traffic. We are accustomed. I mean, my daughter Elisheva is the head of Jewish studies in one of the Jewish schools here, and some of the children are from quite affluent families. So she had a girl who was like maybe 6 years old or 7 years old, and I think she asked her like about a birthday party or if her parents buy her presents. So she says, no, our parents don't buy her presents. So really, because she knew it was quite wealthy, she said, no, my parents don't have to buy me. I just go on the computer and I see what I like. I just press on the button and it comes the next day. So now if you imagine a child who becomes an adult, the child is the father of the man, and we all live even if you're from last century like me, but even so we live in times when we are accustomed to instant gratification. So that experience sort of promotes within us that expectation and that maybe preoccupation with what we have right now. We're not accustomed to waiting. We're not accustomed to that patience and to that recognition that that tomorrow maybe is more important than today. Right? We said Yesh Machar Shehu La'achar Zman. There is a machar, which means the future, not only tomorrow, but it means at the future in a more general sense. Take a look. Now, when we look more closely at this idea of machar, there's something more profound here as well. How do you spell machar? Don't tell me, I know we have Hebraeus here, let's say one of the others maybe, who's not a native Hebrew speaker. Machar. Mem chet. Resh, not too difficult. Machar. Do you agree, Gabriel? Gabriel is a student of one of the fine Jewish schools where my boys went to as well. Machar.
Just closed down.
Just closed down, yeah, I know. Until a few hours ago, he was a student there, yeah. They may reopen again at some future time. Anyway, Machar, one of the schools had some health and safety considered, yeah. So Machar is Mem Chet Resh. Do you know that Machar, Mem Chet Resh, has the same letters as Rechem? Rechem means womb, because the function of a womb is for the future. The womb doesn't fulfill, I'm sure it does fulfill important functions, but you don't have to be a medical doctor like Rabbi to know that this is the function of a womb for tomorrow. Rechem and Machar derive from the same idea of something which is for the future, something which creates for the future, something of which the impact is in the future. Yeah, Rechem is also to Rachem. Okay, Rachem, yes. Okay, but that's because it's the nature of a woman to have mercy on the produce of her womb. Yeah, of course they are related. But rechem and machar are related in this way as well, as we have explained. Now, the experience of the Jewish people during their sojourn in the wilderness, which was most devastating, they had two great tragedies. But the first, and maybe the most devastating, was the Chet HaEgel, the sin of the golden calf. Take a look at source number 8, and we have something interesting, that Moshe went up to Mount Sinai and he stayed there longer than the people were expecting him to stay. Maybe his intention was to stay there for 40 days and to come down after 40 days. But perhaps they thought he's going to go up to the mountain and come down on the 40th day, because it was only a matter of literally a few hours. They were waiting for Moshe and he wasn't back yet. Vayaram ki voshesh Moshe l'redet min ha'ar. Voshesh, it was already midday, Moshe wasn't back yet. He came back the next day. But they thought he was going to come down back on the 40th day. On another occasion, maybe we can explain why were they so not so much eager, but why were they unable to wait for another day? But we'll see right now that Aharon tried to persuade them for another day. Take a look closely at source number 8. The people took off their golden rings. It says that kol ha'am, but actually means the men, because the women did not contribute to the Chet HaEgel, the sin of the golden calf. The men, however, did. Vayikach mi'adam, he took it from their hands. Vayatzar oso bacheret, and he fashioned it with a graving tool. Vayasehu egel masecha. From that, he made a molten calf. That's what Aharon did. Vayomru eile Elohecha Yisrael. These are your gods, O Israel. Asher ha'elucha me'eretz Yisrael, who brought you out of Egypt. Again, who said it, and how could the Jewish people have believed that this molten golden calf that was formed just now from gold could have been the one who took them out of Egypt? This is a mystery which we can explain on another occasion. But take a look what Aaron. Now Aaron is desperate to delay them. He's desperate to find some way to persuade them, don't worship this idol. Don't despair of Moshe's return. Moshe is coming back. Don't worry, Moshe has not abandoned us. Vayar Aharon, vayiven mizbeach lefanav. Aharon saw, and he built an altar before him. Vayikra Aharon vayomer Chag Lashem Machar. A celebration to God, a feast to God, is tomorrow. Now, at the simple level, it's just a delaying tactic, because he felt that Moshe was going to come back the next day, and he did come back the next day. But unfortunately, the people got up early, and they were already worshiping the golden calf, dancing around the golden calf, carousing, and it was a very unworthy gathering. When Moshe did return, as you know, he saw the singing, the dancing, and all of that, and he smashed the tablets. By the way, we're going to read it in the parsha, not this week, the following week. So it's coming up very soon. At the simple level, he was trying to delay them, and he didn't quite succeed. But at the deeper level, what he was saying is that go beyond your fixation of today and look forward to the celebration of God tomorrow. If you have that ability to see beyond the immediate, to look beyond the horizon, to anticipate and to have the patience for tomorrow, Chag Lashem, that will be a celebration, a feast to God. Machar meaning Olam Haba, in the world to come. This is similar to the famous turn of phrase in Isaiah, in source number 9. V'hinei sason v'simcha harog bakar shechot son achol basar shtot yayin, eat, drink, and all of that. Echol v'shaso ki machar namus. Let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we shall die. This is, again, the most perhaps well-known example of that fixation on the orgy of consumption and gluttony and drinking to intoxication and everything that goes with it. Let's live it up, for tomorrow we die. So this is Aharon was seeking to encourage them to live beyond that. Chag Lashem Achar, tomorrow can be a festival for God. Now, when we look more closely at Yehoshua, So, and his, remember, Joshua was the one who waged war with Amalek. So this, Rav Hutner says, is, I think, very keen, but you have to look closely at the language to see the remez, the hint. So when Moshe came down from Har Sinai with the tablets in his hands, Yehoshua was waiting for him at the foot of the mountain, because Yehoshua was his, as we mentioned earlier, his valet, his one who accompanied him up to a certain point, and then Moshe went up to the mountain on his own. Yehoshua waited for him when Moshe came down from the mountain. So at a distance, Moshe heard something in the camp. V'yishma Yehoshua es kol ha'am. So Yehoshua is the one who first heard the noise in the camp, because he wasn't part of it. He had accompanied Moshe. So he was somewhere in between the top of the mountain and the camp. Yehoshua was at the foot of the mountain waiting for Moshe. Moshe came down, and as he came down, Yehoshua could hear noise, a tumult in the camp of the Jewish people. Vayishma Yehoshua kol ha'am bareo, vayomer el Moshe kol milchama b'machaneh. There is a sound of a war, like a riot or some sort of civil unrest in the camp. So Moshe corrects him. Vayomer ein kol anos gvura, ve'ein kol anos chalusha, kol anos anochi shamea. It's a little bit cryptic what Moshe says. And then he said, it is not the voice of them that shout for mastery, neither is it the voice of them that cry for being overcome, but the noise of them that sing do I hear. In other words, it's not a voice of war, but it's something else. What was it? Well, of course, they found out soon enough. So, Yehoshua, according to Rav Hutner, Yehoshua was alarmed because he said, Kol milchama b'machaneh. Do you remember the phrase that we saw? Turn back, please, to source number 3 on the other page, the first page. In source number 3, so Amalek came and waged war against the Jewish people, who were not threatening Amalek. They were not even close to the land of Amalek. They certainly had never done any harm to Amalek, but it was an unprovoked attack out of pure viciousness and malevolence and hatred of the Jewish people. So Hashem said to Moshe to raise an army. But take a close look at what it says in the, at the end, well, Pasuk test. And we're looking at source number 3, verse 9, or test in the Hebrew. And go and wage war with Amalek. Now, who did Amalek prey upon in terms of the Jewish people? It says he came to attack the Jewish people, but if you recall, we are going to read in the Parsha Zachar in just this coming Shabbos. Take a look at source number 11.
And the ladies and the old people.
That's right. Take a look. Zachar is Asher. I'm now looking at source number 11. Zachar is Asher asa lecha Amalek baderech, but says coming Mitzrayim. Remember what Amalek did when you left Egypt. Asher korcha baderech, who met you by the way. And he had smote the hindmost of thee. It says all that were enfeebled in thy rear. V'yizanev b'cha, zanav is a tail. Kol hanecheshalim acharecha. All of those who were feeble. Chalashim, the weak ones. So according to our tradition, the Medrash says that who was vulnerable to the attack of Amalek? The Jewish people, we said, were riding high. They were deserving of divine favor. They were beneficiaries of divine favor. Hashem left Egypt in a shambles behind them. How was Amalek able to successfully kill some of the Jewish people? The answer is it was only those who were vulnerable, spiritually vulnerable. But weren't they protected? What protection did they have in the wilderness? The clouds, Ananei were the clouds of glory. According to our tradition, those clouds protected them from the perils of the desert, also protected them even from enemy attackers. But there were people who were like rejected by the clouds. There were people who were excluded from the clouds because they were not worthy to be part of the camp. They were people whose vulnerability meant that they were excluded. Let's say their spiritual stature was compromised to the point that they were rejected from the clouds. Okay, those are the ones that Amalek was able to kill. So now, when Yehoshua said, "Kol milchama b'machaneh," milchama, the war for Yehoshua, it reminded him very much of the war with Amalek, which had only happened a few days before. Because how long was it from the departure from Egypt until the giving of the Torah? Actually, this was a bit later, because this was a few weeks after that. This was really on the 40 days after. So it was 49 days from Yetzias Yisrael to Matan Torah, and then another 40 days after the giving of the Torah. But the battle with Amalek, although I don't know offhand exactly when it took place, but it certainly took place after they crossed the sea. So basically, it was only a few weeks before. So again, Yehoshua said, I hear the sound of a battle in the camp, which means that Amalek, who is the one who waged war against the Jewish people, previously the poison of Amalek was only able to overcome those who were excluded from the camp. But now it has penetrated within the camp. Kol milchama b'machaneh. The milchama is not only outside of the clouds of glory which have protected the Jewish people, but unfortunately it has penetrated within as well. So this is how the Sfas Emes, one of the Hasidic masters, says that Yehoshua was right when he said that the influence of Amalek, who doesn't want to wait until tomorrow, the downfall of Amalek is tomorrow, the triumph of Amalek is today. So Aharon tried to persuade the people, wait until tomorrow, but the people wouldn't do it. That means they were infected with the toxin of Amalek. What you see is what you get. Like they used to say in computer, WYSIWYG, what you see is what you get. That's what Esav was about. Ha'adom hazeh, only what I can see. There is no tomorrow for Esav. Esav says, I'm hungry now. Lama zeli b'chora. I'm probably going to die before my father anyway. The future? Who cares about the future? I want something now. So this is what we learn about Esther. That's why, to go back to where we began, that's why Esther says to the king, tomorrow I will come to another banquet tomorrow, because today is the time when we are battling with Amalek. Tomorrow is the time of the downfall of Amalek. Someone who has the patience, who has the faith, who has the orientation, like we read in Megillah Yisrael in source number 7, to recognize that the purpose of creation is for Olam Haba. However, in order to get to Olam Haba, we have our time in Olam Hazeh, in this world, and the way to prepare ourselves, the way to be worthy, and the way to be able to experience and value and appreciate the bliss of the next world is by nourishing my soul in this world. So Judaism does not denigrate the importance of this world. On the contrary, the Torah is preoccupied primarily with this world. The mitzvot are to perform in this world. But nevertheless, we have the recognition that there is this world is only a station, not a destination. Ultimately, the destination is Olam Haba. And this is why perhaps Purim, according to the Medrash, is the one festival that will never be superseded, even in Messianic times. Because Purim is the festival of Machar. Purim is the festival of the downfall of Haman, the downfall of Amalek, and therefore Purim will always be celebrated even in the time of Mashiach, and even therefore, and when we reach the final time of Machar, which is the downfall of Amalek, then we'll still celebrate Purim, which encapsulates this idea. So thank you very much for listening. Maybe I shouldn't have done so much talk. I should have given you a bit more chance. Now, so if there are any questions, comments, objections, or anything like that, put them in writing and submit them. No, we're happy to entertain any further thoughts that you have. What do you say, Ruthie? Ruthie is my most devoted admirer and harshest critic as well. And that's why we love her so much. So what do you say, Ruthie?
We want a quick review of the law of Purim.
The laws of Purim? We said eat, drink, and be merry. What's that? The laws of Purim. That's a different lecture. Okay, so the mitzvahs of Purim are quite well known. We have hearing the Megillah at night, we hear the Megillah during the day. Many people imagine that the main event is the Megillah at night. That's maybe a bit more dramatic because we've been fasting during the day and that sort of thing. And of course, we do hear the Megillah at night, we make a bracha on it, 3 blessings in fact, and a bracha afterwards as well. But hearing Megillah in the daytime is actually even more important. So even though it may not be as convenient, you have to get up quite early or find a time maybe during the lunch hour. In some cases you can find Megillah reading, or even after work if need be, if you get back in time. And it's proper to hear the Megillah in the morning rather than at another time during the day. But of course the other mitzvah that we perform are the mitzvah of Mishlach Manot, the mitzvah of Matanot Levinim, gifts to the poor, and of course the Mishteh, the banquet, the Su'udah itself as well. It's interesting, although we like to have a formal Su'udah where we wash our hands, we have bread, we say Birkat HaMazon, and that's certainly recommended. Strictly speaking, it's not required for the Purim Su'udah to have bread. It is required, like on Shabbat and other times, but on Purim it's not required to have bread. The main thing is the drinking, that's right. So it's interesting that the drinking is more essential because eating we do every day, but drinking, for a Jew at least, is something we don't necessarily do every day. I don't say don't drink anything, but what I mean is drinking to intoxication is only one day a year on the Purim.
It's got 4 M's. Mishteh, Megillah, Mishloach Manot, and Matanot.
Levinim. Yeah, very good, very good. So those are the 4, the mem times 4. So on another occasion we've discussed whether it's actually a mitzvah to get drunk, maybe it's an obligation to get drunk, but we'll save that maybe for another. You think I should talk about it?
Why does it say getting drunk? It says to get tipsy, that you don't know the difference between Haman and
Yes.
I don't think
getting drunk is required. Yeah. Okay.
It's quite,
So there are different schools of thought in this matter. The Gemara.
I can't drink alcohol. So I can't even stomach it. So.
Well, the Ramah, if you don't like to drink, the Ramah comes to your aid, and he says you only have to just drink a little bit more than you're accustomed to drinking, and then if you fall asleep or if you even take a nap deliberately, then when a person is asleep, he can't distinguish between Haman and Mordechai, and therefore he has already fulfilled that which it says. It's a bit of a killjoy point of view, but maybe it's one can rely upon that in a situation of need. But many look to fulfill the mitzvah, and it's.
You also have to get drunk properly. I mean, they say the Gemara says there's 3 ways you know the personality of a person: kis, ka'as, and kos. One's true essence comes out with their kis, how they give charity, what they do with what they spend their money on. Ka'as, what they get angry about, and kos, what comes out when they drink. So really, one has to be
Koso
careful.
v'kiso v'kaso.
That's right. B'shalosh adam nikar, b'koso, b'kiso, b'kaso. Yeah, that's true. Maybe I just have one last recollection. I think I mentioned it here to some of you recently. When I was in yeshiva, when I was first in yeshiva, going back a long, long time ago, about more than 40 years ago, I was in Jerusalem. I was 17 years old, and I was in yeshiva on Purim night. And we had a Purim party on the night of Purim. I think we had a band, and we were dancing, and it was great exuberance and a great atmosphere. And there was some drinking going on as well. I didn't drink. I was only years later, after I met Ruthie, I started to drink. When I moved to England, then I began to appreciate the glories of the grain. But at that time I didn't. Even on Purim I didn't drink. Even now I don't really get drunk on Purim, but I just drink a little bit. But the point is that my Rabbi was drunk. He was completely drunk. I mean, he wasn't stone drunk, but he was like Tov Leiv Hamelech Beyayin. His heart was exuberant with drink, and he was dancing out in a kind of drunken, with a group of other people. And what he was saying and singing were the words of the Gemara. The Gemara that we were learning in the Shiur that day or the previous day, those were the words that he was singing. Made a big impression on me. I still remember to this day, Mana Tvira Tavar, Asugi and Bava Kama. And that's what he was singing, that's what he was dancing to, because that was what was on his mind. I'm not saying he could have delivered a breathtaking, brilliant disquisition in that state, but that's what he was thinking. That's what came out of him. It made, as I say, a deep impression on me. That he was drinking because it was a mitzvah to drink, or whatever, part of the fun. But what emerged from his thoughts and his sort of singing and conversation were the words of the Torah, the words of the Gemara. As I say, even though it was a technical subject that we were learning, but that was on his mind. And as I say, it made a deep impression on me. So that's the kind of drunkenness which I think even the Ramah would probably allow for those who could go down there. Okay, thank you very much. I wish everyone a Chag Purim Sameach, joyous and exuberant Purim. And we thank you for joining. Anyway, I hope we've uncovered an aspect, even at least one word of Megillah Esther that we've explored together tonight, and hopefully it will be something that you can ponder tomorrow. Thank you very much.